continue on with section 8.5. And so you're going to notice up here on the board where it says to go ahead and factor. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So from yesterday, what's my very first step?
Find as high as possible.
I need to pair them up, okay? Now, after I pair those up, I look at the first pair. And what can you take out from the first pair?
2M.
A 2m. So I'm going to go ahead and take that 2m out. What do I get?
K minus 12.
K what?
K minus 6.
K minus 6. What can you take out from the second bunch?
7.
7, and what do you get?
6.
Negative 6
Okay, we got a problem, and what's the problem?
Negative 6 and negative K.
Yeah, they're the same thing, but they're opposite signs, right? So what I'm going to do when I combat that, I'm just going to go back to the original problem. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip-flop those last two terms. Now some of you might be able to notice that from the get-go. Because if you look at it first here, I have a K, no K, no K, and K, right? So you obviously know you're going to have issues there. So you might be able to recognize that from the get-go and flip them at the start. But now by flipping them, let's group. And I know you've already done this. We've already got a 2m that we factored out. And I've got a K minus 6. What can I take out here?
7.
Only this one it's going to be a negative 7. Okay, because remember that lead term there, we don't want that to be negative. And so when I take a negative 7 out, I get K, and then minus 6. So now they match. So really what that will factor to be is K minus 6 times 2m minus 7. So like I said, if you recognize it at the start, you can flip it and save yourself a little bit of time, but it doesn't take much time to go through and flip it. Go from there. Let's look at another one. So once again, if you wanted to look at this and recognize, you could say, oh, I go C, CD, D, and nothing. So you could say, oh, the D's aren't going to match up. So from the beginning, you could say, hey, I've got a D in the second term here. I don't have one here, so I'm going to flip-flop those two. And did any of you notice that on your homework? Were you getting the ones that were opposite? Yeah, okay, that's why. So now if we just flip-flop those, it'll be a lot easier for us to go through and solve. So what can you take out of the first bunch? A C. And when I take a C out, 1 minus 2D. What can you take out of the second bunch? Negative 4, and I get 1 minus 2D. Okay, so really all of that will factor to be 1 minus 2D times C minus 4. Let's go ahead and work on the bottom one. Okay. So the bottom example, 3p minus 2p squared minus 18p plus 27. So if you group them, you can take out a p, and I get 3 minus 2p. What can you take out of the second? A negative 9, and I get negative 2p minus 3. So this is a flipper. Okay, got to switch those last ones around. So 3p minus 2p squared plus 27 minus 18p. So now if we go ahead and group those,
Why wouldn't it be positive 2?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
then you get a positive 18 instead of a negative 18.
whoa, what do you mean positive 2?
For the, like, negative 9 parentheses, negative 2p.
Oh, it should have been a 2p. Yeah, it should have been a positive, sorry. So what can you take out of the first bunch? A p, and that leaves me with 3 minus 2p. What can you take out of the second? A 9, and what does that leave me with? 3 minus 2p. So that actually worked out really slick. I know that my final answer will then be,
3 minus 2p
mm-hmm.
and 9.
Yep, I went ahead and started writing p plus 9 first. It doesn't matter. Okay, just as long as you have both factors. And there you go. Okay? So that should help with some of the problems on your homework. Any questions? We've got another type of problem that you probably noticed, and it said to solve some equations towards the end. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and look at the following. Solve each equation, and it says to check your solutions. Okay. So the very first problem is 2x plus 6 quantity times 3x minus 15 quantity equals 0. Okay. 2x plus 6 quantity times 3x minus 15 quantity equals 0. So now, one of the things in order to solve these is we're going to use something known as the zero product property. What the zero product property states is if you have two terms, and when you multiply them together, it equals 0. Either this term, so either 2x plus 6 equals 0, or this equals 0. So 3x minus 15 equals 0. That's what the zero product property states. So I've just got two basic equations I need to solve. So the first one, what am I going to do to solve 2x plus 6 equals 0?
Subtract 6.
I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides very first. So when I do that, I get 2x to equal negative 6. So to solve that now, I'm going to go ahead and divide by 2. So I should get x to equal negative 3. Now when it says to check your solutions, what I'm going to quickly do is I'm going to take negative 3 and I'm going to plug it in right here. So what is 2 times negative 3? If I add 6 to that, do I get 0? Okay, there's your check. So now on the next one, I need to solve 3x minus 15 equals 0. So I'm going to go ahead and add 15 to both sides. So what do I get 3x to equal? 15. What do I need to do now? Divide by 3. So what do you get x to equal? 5. So real quick, I'm going to plug 5 in here. What's 3 times 5?
15.
Does 15 minus 15 equal 0?
Yes.
So you're good. So those are two possibilities. That is how you would solve that system of equations. Okay, let's look at the next one down below. 3n times the quantity n plus 2 equals 0. So according to our zero product property, I have two quantities. Either this one, so either 3n equals 0, or what? n plus 2 equals 0. So let's solve. So to solve that for n, what do you do? Divide by 3. So n equals 0. Okay, so real quick, if I plug 0 in here, 3 times 0 is? Good. Okay, over on the next one, what do you do? Subtract 2. So I get n to equal -2. So real quick, if I plug -2 in here, -2 plus 2, does that equal 0? Yep, you're good. So far, so good? But what happens if they're not in factored form, which is what you're going to run into? Okay. So we're going to go ahead and start with that very first one. M squared equals 3m. M squared equals 3m. Now, if you remember on the previous slide, each of the equations equaled what? 0. I don't have an equal 0 here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to manipulate the equation so that I get an equal 0. So in order to do that, I'm going to just subtract 3m from both sides. The reason why I chose 3m as opposed to the m squared is because it was the lower power. Okay, I always like to keep that highest power positive. So I really get m squared minus 3m, and now that equals 0. So we still don't look a lot like the previous slide, okay, because it was in factored form. So now I have two terms. So I'm going to go back to the very first slide of this lesson. And I looked for something in common between those two terms. What's in common between these two terms? M. So I'm going to go ahead and factor an m out. So if I take an m from m squared, it leaves me with an m minus 3 equals 0. So now that should resemble what we had on the previous slide. Zero product property states that either m equals 0, because that's what this term is here, or what equals 0? M minus 3 equals 0. So m equals 0, that's a done deal. So what do I do with the m minus 3 equals 0? Add 3. So really, what do I get m to equal here? 3. So if I plug 3 in here, I get 3 minus 3, which is 0, which works, and we're done. Questions? Let's focus on the 8n squared minus 40n. So 8n squared minus 40n equals 0. You walk me through this problem. What do I do? Yep. So be what? 8n. Okay. What do I do next?
10 minus 5.
Okay. Okay.
N is equal to 0, and n minus 5 is equal to 0.
Okay. So what is my solution here for the first one, or what do I do? Divide by 8. So what does n equal? 0. Okay, what do I do on the next one? Add 5. So I get n is equal to 5. Okay?
So the answer is n equals 0 and n equals 5.
Right. You have two possibilities on that one. Now on this last one, I think we've got the hang of things. I just want somebody to tell me how I would start out this problem. And we're not going to solve it, but just what would I do in this problem to get it started? Yeah, go ahead. I would just add 10w to both sides. And so really what ends up happening is I would get w squared plus 10w equals what? 0. And then what would I do? I would then find out what's in common, factor it out. Okay? So, any questions? Okay, we should have then covered everything from section 8.5 now, which means you should be able to finish that assignment for tomorrow. Okay? Probably going to be having a quiz sometime soon, so make sure you're staying up on your work.